The scream tore through the shimmering elegance of Miami's Azure Supper Club. Dr. Arthur Finch, his crisp white dinner jacket stark against the vibrant decor, felt his heart seize. Moments before, his girlfriend, Naomi Dubois, had smiled across the polished mahogany table, her eyes bright despite her mother, Lena, and sister, Brianna, dissecting Arthur's modest background with thinly veiled disdain. Their words, sharp as diamond chips, dismissed his career as a general practitioner, implying he was not quite enough for their prestigious white family. Yet in this heart-stopping instant, it was Arthur's steady hands that held Naomi's fate. Arthur, 34, a black doctor whose quiet brilliance often went unnoticed by the city's elite, had spent a decade patching up lives, from dock workers to art collectors. His hands, usually stitching wounds, now sought Naomi's wrist, her pulse thready and erratic. The 3 years with Naomi, a 32-year-old tech entrepreneur, had been a tapestry of shared dreams. But tonight, January 15th, 2025, felt like a judgment. The Azure Supper Club, a cathedral of wealth on the Miami coastline, hummed with the scent of saffron and privilege. Fairy lights twinkled along the entrance, framing a world of luxury Arthur had never fully belonged to. His tailored dinner jacket, though expensive, felt like a borrowed skin among the bespoke suits and designer gowns. Yet tonight, he was here to claim his place, not by birthright, but by love. He'd met Naomi at a charity gala, her sharp wit and compassionate gaze instantly drawing him in. Their connection had been immediate, a shared passion for making a difference. But her family, the formidable Dubois matriarchy, was a different story. Lena Dubois, Naomi's mother, her silk caftan, a cascade of emerald, surveyed Arthur with eyes as cold as the January ocean. Her silver-streaked hair, swept into an elegant bun, spoke of old money and ingrained tradition. "Dr. Finch, isn't it?" She'd purred, her handshake limp and fleeting, as if touching him might tarnish her. "Naomi told us you're a doctor, quite." Grounded. The pause before grounded was a subtle knife, suggesting his general practice was beneath them, a far cry from the high-flying specialists they preferred. Brianna, her sleek blonde bob framing a face sharp with youth and privilege, leaned in. Her ivory gown, understated but screaming wealth, shimmered under the chandelier. "A general practitioner, though, my goodness." She'd smirked, her tone sugary but sharp. "Don't they say specialists make the real waves? Guess you got lucky with some of those charity cases, huh?" The word lucky landed like a stone, implying Arthur's success was a fluke, not the result of countless nights poring over medical texts or hands steady through life-or-death diagnoses. Arthur's fingers tightened briefly around his napkin, but his expression remained serene, his dark eyes locking onto Brianna's with quiet resolve. "I love what I do," he said, his voice steady and resonant. "Helping people, whether they're factory workers or philanthropists, is why I'm a doctor. Every life matters." His words were a deflection, a scalpel cutting through Brianna's barb with precision. He caught Naomi's glance, hoping for a nod, a spark of support. But she was already turning, her attention snagged by a prominent investor waving from the aisle. Her silence was a cold whisper, echoing the chilling reality that he was fighting this battle alone. He excused himself, retrieving his coat, the evening's pretense shattering. He was ready to walk away, bruised but unbroken. Then, the scream. Naomi staggered from the bar, her elegant dress rumpled, her face ashen. Her bright eyes, moments ago lively, were wide with panic as she clutched her chest, her knees buckling. "Help!" She gasped, her voice broken, before collapsing, her body convulsing in violent seizures. The dining room erupted. Glasses clinked, chairs scraped, and guests surged back, their murmurs rising to a frantic hum. Lena's shriek pierced the chaos, her caftan tangling as she lurched forward. "Naomi," she cried, her composure unraveling. Brianna froze, fumbling uselessly for her phone. The elite crowd parted, their tuxedos and gowns a blur. Arthur's heart pounded, but his instincts, honed by a decade of saving lives, kicked in like a switch. He dropped his coat, rushing to Naomi's side, kneeling beside her, his hands steady. "She's having a stroke. Call 911, he barked, his voice cutting through the din. His fingers found Naomi's wrist, her pulse rapid and thready. Her face was contorted, lips tinged blue, her body jerking. "Naomi, stay with me," he said, his tone calm but commanding, willing her to hold on. He tilted her head to clear her airway, moving with surgical precision. The crowd's clamor faded, his focus narrowing to the woman before him, a patient, a life in his hands. "Lena, any aspirin here?" Arthur called. Lena, trembling, shook her head. "We don't keep it out," she wailed. Brianna, tears streaming, clutched her mother's arm, useless in crisis. Arthur turned to a server. "Check the kitchen staff supplies. First aid kit, low-dose aspirin, now," he ordered. The server sprinted away. Arthur's mind raced through protocols. He wasn't an ER doctor, but he'd faced emergencies in hospital wards. His hands monitored Naomi's pulse, his voice a lifeline. "Slow breaths, Naomi. I've got you," he said. The crowd pressed closer, whispering, "Who is he?" "A doctor." But Arthur shut them out. The server returned, breathless, a single 81 mg aspirin tablet. "Chew it slowly," Arthur instructed, guiding Naomi's trembling jaw. "It'll thin your blood, buy us time." He counted seconds. Naomi's seizures eased slightly, her breathing shallow but steadier, and Arthur's chest tightened with cautious relief. He wasn't saving her for the Dubois' approval or for the love that had fractured moments ago. He was saving her because it was who he was, a healer who didn't falter. Sirens wailed outside. Paramedics burst through. Arthur rose, his jacket creased with urgency, his voice crisp as he briefed them. "Female, 32, suspected ischemic stroke, seizure onset 5 minutes ago, aspirin administered 3 minutes ago, vitals unstable but holding." The lead medic nodded, impressed. "Good work, Doc," he said. Arthur stepped back, his heart hammering. Naomi's body was lifted onto a stretcher. The dining room was a tableau of shock. Lena clutched Brianna, her sobs muffled, her eyes flickering to Arthur with something new, fear or awe. Brianna's wide eyes followed Arthur, her earlier disdain erased, replaced by trembling respect. Arthur stood tall, his white jacket catching the chandelier's light, stained but radiant. The crowd's whispers grew. "He saved her, that doctor. Did you see?" Their phones already buzzing. Arthur's gaze swept the room. He'd acted not for their praise, but because lives mattered, because his hands were built to heal even when his heart was breaking. The sterile hum of Miami Bay General was a stark contrast to the azure. Dr. Arthur Finch stood outside room 304, his jacket creased, his face weary, his heart a heavy drumbeat. The weight of the evening, Naomi's stroke, her family's prejudice, their belated apologies, clung to him. Arthur had saved Naomi's life, but the cost, the fracture of their 3-year love, loomed. He pushed the door open. Naomi lay pale, hooked to monitors, her eyes clouded with pain and gratitude. "Arthur," she rasped, reaching for him, "you saved my life. I was an idiot, ignoring you, letting Mom and Brianna talk like that. I'm so sorry." Her apology was raw, but it landed like a stone in Arthur's chest, heavy with the weight of too little, too late. He stood at the foot of the bed. The memory of Lena's venomous jabs, Brianna's smirking insults, and Naomi's laughter at the bar while he fought alone burned in his mind. I didn't save you for an apology, Naomi, he said, his voice low. I saved you because it's my duty, because I'm a doctor. His words were a shield, guarding the heart that had loved her fiercely. Naomi's face crumpled. I love you, Arthur, she said, breaking. I messed up. Give me another chance, please. Her plea was a lifeline, but the stars felt distant now, obscured by the pain of her inaction, the Dubois' scorn a scar on his soul. Arthur's heart ached with the weight of 3 years. But love wasn't just moments. It was choices, and Naomi's choice to stay silent had left him to face her family's prejudice alone. I gave you 3 years, Naomi, he said, his voice soft but unyielding. I fought for us, for me, while you stood by. Love means standing up, especially when it's hard. I can't go back. His words were a severance, a blade cutting through the fragile thread of their bond. Naomi's eyes filled with tears. I'll change, Arthur, she whispered, but his promises felt hollow against the reality of his solitude. Arthur's gaze softened with a quiet sorrow for what might have been. You deserve to heal, Naomi, he said, gentle but firm. But I deserve a love that sees me, that fights for me. I have to choose myself now. His words were a vow, a reclamation of his worth forged in the crucible of his own hard-earned accomplishments. He stepped back. The hospital room felt smaller. Outside, the Miami skyline shimmered, a world beyond the pain. Arthur's chest ached, but his resolve was a steel core. He'd love Naomi, but love wasn't enough without action. Naomi's hand fell to the sheet. I'm sorry, Arthur, she said. But he was already turning, his steps resolute. Take care, Naomi, he said, a final gift of grace. He pushed the door open and stepped into the corridor. The fluorescent light was harsh but honest. Arthur paused, his hand brushing his jacket, a relic of triumphs and wounds. He'd saved a life, but more than that, he'd saved himself, choosing his dignity over a love that faltered. The skyline beyond the window called, its lights a promise of new beginnings. Arthur took a slow breath, his heart heavy but whole. He walked toward the elevator, his path clear. He was a doctor, a man unbroken, and this reckoning was his alone. The Miami spring of 2025 bloomed. For Dr. Arthur Finch, the season was a crucible of renewal. His clinic, Finch Family Health, hummed with purpose. Arthur, dark hair tied back, moved through the exam room, his white coat crisp, his dark eyes alight. At 34, he was a beacon, a doctor whose decade of healing had saved countless lives. In the wake of heartbreak, he was forging a legacy no prejudice could dim. The exam room was a sanctuary, its walls adorned with children's drawings. Arthur knelt before a young boy, Miguel, whose chronic asthma had once chained him to hospital beds. Breathe deep for me, champ, Arthur said, his voice warm and steady. Miguel's breaths were clear, a triumph of Arthur's tailored treatment. You're a superstar, Arthur said, and Miguel's mother, tears brimming, clasped his hands. You gave us our son back, Dr. Finch. The words were a balm, soothing the scars left by the Dubois' scorn. Arthur's days were a whirlwind, but his nights belonged to research. In a small office, he pored over medical journals, his laptop glowing with data on chronic illness interventions, focusing on early stroke detection. His latest project had caught the eye of global health journals. He typed furiously, each word a brick in his future. The memory of that January night, Lena's icy jabs, Brianna's barbs, Naomi's betrayal, fueled him, not as pain, but as fire. He'd chosen himself, and now he was building a world where his worth was undeniable. His clinic had become a haven for the underserved. He even treated a reclusive billionaire, Mr. Vance, whose rare blood disorder had baffled specialists. You're a miracle worker, Vance said, pressing a substantial check for his clinic into his hand. Arthur accepted it not for himself but for new equipment and lives it would save. His reputation soared. Yet the past lingered. Late one evening, Arthur's phone buzzed. It was Brianna Dubois. "Arthur, I was awful that night. I'm so sorry. Can we talk? I want to make this right. I've been doing a lot of self-reflection." The words were tentative, raw, a crack in the Dubois armor. Arthur's fingers hovered. Brianna's apology at the Azure had been sincere, but words were cheap. "Actions matter, Brianna." Arthur typed, firm but open. "I'm willing to listen. Show me." He hit send. The clinic's waiting room buzzed the next day. Arthur moved between rooms, his white coat a symbol of his vow to heal. A nurse handed him a journal article, his stroke protocol featured on the cover. His chest swelled with quiet pride. He'd turned pain into purpose. His work drew attention beyond Miami. At a medical conference, Arthur stood at a podium, his voice clear and resonant. "Early intervention saves lives," he declared. Among the captivated audience was Dr. Simone Davis, the brilliant director of Miami Bay General. Her blonde, discerning eyes followed him. As Arthur stepped off the stage, Simone approached. "Dr. Finch, your work is groundbreaking," she said. "I'd love to discuss a collaboration. Your passion for community care aligns perfectly with our vision." Arthur's eyes met hers, his smile cautious but intrigued. "I'm listening," he said, his tone professional. But a spark flickered, a connection of respect, a promise of shared purpose. The conference hall buzzed, the city skyline shimmering, and Arthur felt the weight of his victory. He wasn't just surviving, he was thriving. His clinic is a beacon, his research a flame. The Dubois' shadow lingered, but it was faint, outshone by his light. The Miami summer of 2025 shimmered. Dr. Arthur Finch stood in the conference room of Miami Bay General Hospital. At 34, his face bore the quiet strength of a man who'd turned heartbreak into triumph. His clinic thrived, his research earning accolades. But today, August 10, 2025, he was here for a different reason, a collaboration with Dr. Simone Davis, whose respect had sparked something new in his guarded heart. The room hummed with anticipation, a stark contrast to that January night at the Azure. Simone, a woman in her early 40s, stood at the head of a polished oak table, her blonde hair framing a lean, confident frame. "Dr. Finch," she said, "your stroke intervention protocol could transform our ER. Let's brainstorm integration." Her smile was genuine, free of the condescension Arthur had faced. Arthur sat, poised. "I'm all ears, Dr. Davis," he said, his eyes meeting hers. They dove into logistics. Arthur's voice was clear, his insights sharp. Simone listened intently, her questions probing but respectful, her laughter at his dry wit a spark. "You've thought of everything," she said. Arthur's chest warmed, not with romance, but with the rare joy of being seen. Their meeting stretched over weeks, the conference room giving way to coffee shops and hospital corridors, their collaboration a bridge of shared purpose. One evening, in a cozy cafe, Simone leaned across the table. "Arthur," she said, dropping the formal title, "your work isn't just data, it's lives. You're changing the game." Her words were a tribute. Arthur's guard softened. "Thank you, Simone," he said. "It's about the patients, giving them a chance no matter who they are." He spoke of his clinic, Miguel's clear lungs, and the billionaire who'd funded equipment. Simone listened, her gaze never wavering. She shared her own story, years in trauma, the belief that medicine should serve all. Their conversation flowed, touching on systemic inequalities. Her candor was a balm to Arthur's scars. The city's pulse beat around them. Arthur's heart, once bruised by Naomi's silence, stirred with cautious hope. Simone wasn't Naomi. Her respect was action. Yet he held back his trust, tempered by the memory of a love that faltered. "You're easy to talk to," he said, "but I'm not one for rushing in." Simone's smile was gentle. "I'm not going anywhere, Arthur," she said, a promise. Their partnership deepened. At a hospital gala, Arthur stood commanding. Simone approached, offering water. "You outshine the room," she said, sincere. Arthur laughed. They danced, her hands steady at his waist. "You're not bad at this," he teased. "Years of practice, but you make it easy." The night air was crisp as they stepped onto a balcony. Simone turned to him. "Arthur, you're more than a colleague. You're someone I want in my life. I respect you, your work, and your heart. I want to build something real if you're open." Her words were a bridge, her eyes searching his. Arthur's breath caught, his heart a tangle of hope and caution. He'd rebuilt himself. Simone saw him as Arthur, whole and fierce. "I'm not saying no," he said, soft but firm. "But I need time. Real means trust, and I'm learning that again." Simone nodded, her smile warm. "I'll wait," she said. They stood in silence. Arthur's dark hair caught the moonlight. He wasn't ready to love, not yet, but the spark with Simone was real. The waterfront stretched, a whisper of new beginnings, and Arthur felt his heart open just a fraction. The Miami autumn of 2026 burned. Dr. Arthur Finch stood on the waterfront, the waves mirroring his steady heart. His dark hair caught the breeze, framing his radiant face, his dark eyes gleaming with quiet joy. At 35, Arthur was a titan, his clinic, Finch Family Health, a beacon. His research saved lives. The scars from the azure had faded, transformed into fuel for his triumph. Tonight, October 15th, 2026, he stood whole, his life a tapestry of purpose and love. The waterfront was alive with fairy lights. Arthur's dark suit shimmered. Simone stood beside him, her blonde hair, her elegance, her presence steady. Their relationship, a year strong, was a partnership forged in respect. Late nights, shared coffees, a love that saw him fully. "You're glowing tonight," Simone said, her voice soft. Arthur smiled, his heart full. "It's the city," he teased. His joy ran deeper, rooted in his work, his journey, his choice to love again. His clinic had expanded, a second location funded by grants and patients like Mr. Vance. His stroke protocol, now nationwide, had slashed mortality rates. He'd saved countless lives, each a testament to his vow to heal. The pier buzzed. Arthur and Simone strolled when a familiar figure approached, Brianna Dubois, her blonde bob softer, her eyes bright with nervous hope. "Arthur," Brianna said, raw. "I hoped you'd be here." She wore a simple blouse and held a folder emblazoned with Finch Family Health. "I've been volunteering at your clinic," she rushed, earnest. 6 months now, helping with outreach and admin. This is a refined proposal for a mobile health unit. I've even secured initial funding. I want to keep learning to do better." Arthur's breath caught. He took the folder, scanning her notes. "This is incredibly thorough and thoughtful, Brianna," Arthur said, his tone warm but measured. "Actions matter, and you're truly showing them. Let's talk next week about getting this unit off the ground." Brianna's face lit up, a genuine smile, a crack in the Dubois legacy mending. Arthur felt a quiet pride for inspiring profound change. Brianna nodded, her eyes glistening. The crowd thickened. Simone squeezed Arthur's hand. "You're a force, Arthur. You don't just heal bodies, you heal people, even the ones who hurt you. You've taught me a lot about true empathy." Her words were a mirror reflecting his strength. Arthur's chest swelled. He thought of his journey, his determination. The Dubois' prejudice had been a storm. But Arthur had rebuilt his clinic, his research, and his heart, a testament to his resilience. They paused by the water, the skyline shimmering, its lights a promise kept. Simone turned to him, her eyes unguarded, her voice a vow. "We're building something real, Arthur, a world where you're seen, always. I'm all in for you, for us." His words echoed their first dance, but now carried the weight of a year's trust. Arthur's heart opened fully, his smile radiant. "I'm all in too," he said, his hand tightening in hers. He didn't need Simone to complete him. He was whole. But her love was a gift he cherished. The band's melody soared. Arthur leaned into Simone. He reflected on his journey, the night at the Azure, proving his strength, Brianna's redemption, his clinic's reach, Simone's unwavering love, seeds he'd planted, now blooming into a vibrant reality. The Dubois walls hadn't crumbled overnight, but Arthur had cracked them. His light was a force no prejudice could dim. The waves lapped. Arthur's dark hair danced in the breeze, his eyes tracing the stars, faint but fierce. He was Dr. Arthur Finch, healer, partner, innovator, and this chapter, his triumph, was complete. The city's pulse beat around him, the future a canvas of fire and hope. As he stood with Simone, his hand in hers, Arthur knew he'd written a story that would echo, a legacy of courage and love that would endure. Thank you for joining Dr. Arthur Finch's journey of courage, resilience, and triumph. His story, from facing prejudice to forging a legacy of healing and love, reminds us that strength shines brightest in adversity. What moved you most? Arthur's life-saving heroism, his unyielding stand against bias, or his path to a love that honors his worth? Drop your thoughts in the comments below and tell us where you're tuning in from, Miami, London, or beyond. Your support lights our way, so please like, subscribe, and share to spread Arthur's fire. We're grateful to every one of you and can't wait to bring you more stories that spark the heart. Until next time, keep shining, keep fighting, and we'll see you